ora, and welcome to the fourth episode of the Aotearoa Guitar Show. Today we'll be talking with Nick Granville, international recording artist and all-around great guy. Nick's been playing guitar for many, many years and has some insightful things to share with us about gear, technique, his experiences, backline foo bars, and all kinds of other fun things. So without further ado, let's talk to Nick. Hi, Nick.
It's nice to meet you, man. Hey, I've got to say, I've watched a bunch of your episodes on here, starting with Glenn and then with my buddy Simon too, and it's really great what you're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm really enjoying it, and it's really fun to meet a whole bunch of people, at least virtually, and then go from there. So it's been really fun, and it's been great to learn about a lot of the things that are happening, here in the country specifically. So it's really cool. It's very cool.
Great.
Yeah. So, hey, thanks for joining, and appreciate you taking the time out of your day to have a chat. Got a few questions. This is all open forum, so anything jumps into your mind, by all means, just start shouting, and it'll all be great. I got some questions that kind of kick us off. First thing I'd actually say is, part of me is like, why are you even doing this? Because Nick is now up to 100 and how many daily YouTube videos you got publishing?
Just about to hit 150.
Yeah.
So and I think I've done more than that if you count all the other little bonusy type things, but 150 days in a row. So it's pretty crazy.
That's amazing. That's a milestone coming up too. So it's kind of like, what can I ask him that he's not already told the world? But yeah, we'll definitely charge through this, and I've enjoyed watching some of those too. Some of them will be slightly redundant, and I'll put a link in the show notes for your channel so that people can see more should they choose. But yeah, so a couple of quick questions right at the top. How long have you actually been playing for?
I started playing piano when I was 5 on a little kid's keyboard, and then all I really wanted to do was play guitar. And my parents bought my brother a guitar and me a little keyboard, and I was so annoyed that I actually broke my brother's guitar. It was only a little plastic thing, So I switched to guitar when I was about 10, and then I'm 45 years old now, so 35 years of playing.
Very nice.
And 30 years of doing it professionally. I started doing gigs professionally when I was 15 years old. So yeah, it's been a minute.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah, this is a nice origin story too, by the way. So. You started with smashing the guitar, kind of the opposite of the Pete Townsend thing. So smash the guitar first, then learn to play it.
Yeah, and I've been lucky to not have to do other things. I've just pretty much done music the whole time. Probably a couple of periods of just gigs, which is pretty rare in this small little country, as you know. So that's been good.
Oh, that's great. So how did you? Other than obviously hard work and a lot of practicing, how do you think you got to the point where you're actually playing internationally and doing those kinds of things outside of New Zealand? What was that barrier that you broke there to move outside of just New Zealand?
Yeah, so probably the first proper trip I did overseas was with Roger Fox Big Band, who sadly just passed away the other day, which is a big loss to our whole community. But my first trip was a trip to LA with Roger. First trip to the States. I played in Australia, but that doesn't really count. It's just a little hop over the pond, Aussies are basically Kiwis' cousins. But we went to the US and we did a record at Capitol Studios with Roger's Big Band and played a bunch of gigs around. That was really my first start. And I loved it so much, and I really enjoy going to the States that I've actually been back to LA 10 times since. And I've been to New York a couple of times, and then I've been to San Francisco 3 or 4 times, and then to Europe. I think getting overseas is a hard thing for a Kiwi because it's a long way to go, and there's a big expense up front. And American visas are not easy to get.
No.
Very difficult, as I'm sure you're aware. But so that was my first step to getting over there and playing and getting in amongst it all. And and then never looked back since. And I try and go once a year now. I'll be there in January in the US for the NAMM show.
Okay.
She'll be my fifth NAMM show that I've been to. So that's always a good fun thing to go and geek out over guitar gear and music and catch up with friends and see the whole juggernaut that is American music scene. So yeah, should be fun.
Oh, that's great. That's fantastic. So I mean, you told me about the piano and then moving to the guitar. Did you have a specific inspiration for wanting to learn to play, or was it just something that you just kind of took to?
Yeah, I loved all things that had guitar in it. I was fascinated with music that had guitar, and often not the things that were really guitar that was flashy. Like I liked a lot of rock music and stuff like that, and then some blues and whatever. But like at that time, and because I was born in '78, so the '80s was when I was really a kid, and in the '80s there was a lot of Michael Jackson type things and all kinds of bands like that were big at the time, the kind of disco funk thing. So I really liked that kind of stuff too. And guitar had a more rhythmic, supportive role, but I really liked that. And the studio guys, the session guys, I was really into those sort of things. So that kind of yeah. And my stepfather was a guitar player, so he kind of was the inspiration for us to play. My brother played guitar as well, and the three of us used to play together a lot, and he'd sort of show us songs and we'd figure them out, and yeah, it was good fun.
No, that's great. That's fantastic.
And then I had a teacher quite early on too.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had a teacher early on that was really inspirational, and that made a big difference.
That's fantastic. How did your Ibanez connection come about?
So yeah, I was doing a TV show here called Dancing with the Stars, and I was the house guitar player on that show. In those days, it was done at TVNZ in Wellington, which was a big studio. It was the biggest one in New Zealand by a long shot, at Studio 8 in Avalon. And we were out there every week. And at the time, we got through season 1, and it was hugely popular. I think the final episode of the first show had 1 million viewers, which for a country of 5 million is 1 in 5. So I actually got offered 2 endorsements at the time, one with another company and then one with Ibanez. And so I looked at the other company, and it was mostly rock guys that they were dealing with. There was no jazz guys or anything outside of the kind of new metal rock thing that was happening at the time. Whereas Ibanez had John Schofield and Pat Metheny and George Benson. I was a huge George Benson fan at the time, still am. And so I kind of thought, yeah, and that made the most sense. And I also thought with Ibanez, I could play a guitar like this. It's kind of like a Telecaster-ish. But then I've got a SCO guitar, which is like a 335. I've got another guitar that's kind of like a Les Paul. So I could cover all the things that I needed with one brand. I don't find that with a lot of guitar brands. Like Fender, for example. If you play Fender, a Strat Tele is really what they do. They don't do the Les Paul type thing.
Right.
And vice versa. If you're with Gibson, they don't do the Fender thing. So Ibanez, I felt, was one that could do it. And they've been a good company to deal with so far. They've been really great.
That's fantastic. Yeah, in my mind, of course, I mean, you kind of stated it too. Like I was thinking, in the 80s and 90s, early 90s, when I thought Ibanez, I thought Steve Vai, and I thought, some of the other like big rock players. But yeah, they do have a wide breadth of different types of guitars. The double cut one that I've seen you use, that one, what model is that?
I've got 2. I've got one that's a hollow body version and one that's a solid body version, same guitar. One's an AR 420 and the other one's an AR 520. Okay. The 420 is kind of like a Les Paul in a lot of ways. It's kind of got that mid-range kick that a Les Paul does. And the other one's like a smaller 335.
Okay.
But both of them are way lighter than my Les Paul, which is back there. My Les Paul's like 10 pounds. I put it on the other day and I was like, oh, my neck is killing me in here. Sounds great, but it's just like I couldn't do a gig with that. It would just, yeah. I have a neck problem I dislocated my collarbone when I was a teenager, and so this all healed. It was really painful, but the muscle in the back now works overtime, which is unfortunate. It's right where a guitar strap goes. So I just can't play heavy guitars.
Yeah, even
though they sound great.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, I saw one of the solid body ARs on Trade Me a while back, and I think it was I want to say it was a 70s model, and I drooled for a little while, and then I let the moment pass, and sometimes I kick myself on that because it looked beautiful, so it was in really good shape.
Yeah, those 70s ones are a little different. They're quite heavy. The more modern ones, which like my ones are significantly lighter. And as again, I just can't play heavy guitars. But those 70s ones were very ornate, some of them, and pretty cool. Yeah. Really like them.
But there was a bit of bling on it, as I recall. So yeah, it was quite nice. So yeah. Yeah. But yeah. So what was your first guitar that you had?
I don't even know what it had. No brand name on it, but it was like this Japanese type guitar, like a Greco type thing or something. With two or three single coil pickups. My brother actually found a photo of it the other day, which it's funny. I haven't. You're saying that. What could you ask me that hasn't been asked? This is one nobody's asked me about my first guitar. I don't think I've ever talked about it. But he found a photo of it where they had two single coils, but they looked like the size of mini humbuckers, like that.
Oh, wow.
Weird Japanese type, I'm trying to think what else that would be similar to it. I don't know. It had a kind of a squared headstock, and it was a really cool guitar. I'd like to get another one of those again. It wasn't the sound I was looking for at the time, but now it'd be like, it was super funky and bright. Whereas at the time I wanted like more heavier and more rock kind of tone, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So my first good guitar after that was an Ibanez. It was an RG, one of those shredded type guitars.
Yeah.
Because I was really into Satch and Steve Vai and those sort of guys. And I remember transcribing the entire Passion and Warfare album, learning every single note, and sang with them, Surfing with the Alien, learned every single note, every bass line, all the parts, Loved it.
That's great. That's fantastic. And amp, what kind of amp did you start off with?
We didn't have an amp when we had that guitar. My stepfather had an acoustic guitar. Again, it was an Ibanez, and it was like a 12-string black guitar that he had converted to be 6, so he's just running 6 strings on it. So that was like the main guitar that had any kind of sound. The electrics we played kind of like this, with no amp. And so I kind of got used to that for like probably my first year of playing. And in a lot of weird ways, I didn't start on acoustic like a lot of people do. I started on that crappy electric that had really high action and was hard to play, but it was a lot of fun,
Yeah. Yeah. That's great.
And I just loved it. I loved guitar. I still do. I do. I mean, I still am as passionate now about guitar as I was then. So 35 years later, crazy.
That is absolutely amazing. So I know you play a lot of different kinds of shows, but do you have kind of if somebody called you and said, hey, we need you at a show tonight, is there a particular rig that you would grab and take out the door with you?
Yeah, so I kind of switched over last year to pretty much always using the modelers now. I use a Fractal FM3 and FM9, and that's pretty much been my thing for a good year now. I moved to Europe in 2019, and lived in London. So I took one when I was over there. I took an old AX8 Fractal, and that was what I used for the shows and the wedding gigs that I did and whatever, because I was able to carry it easily. But about a year ago, I decided to make the switch, and I've got great amps. I've got a couple of Victorias. I've got a Mesa Boogie back there. I've got a Revolver, Mesa Boogie Revolver, which is like a Joe Bonamassa wanted to buy it off me. I got an email from one of his guys saying, kind of secretly saying, would you sell it to me? And then his email was Bonamassa Museum. And I was like, I see what's going on here. So I've got like the real deals and stuff, but
yeah,
I find the modeling stuff works really well for what I do now, because I need to do a lot of different things. I can't have an amp cranked up on almost any of my gigs anymore to really get it in the sweet spot. I mean, if I could, I'd love to have my Bassman and just have it like on 6 or 7. But man, that thing kicks you in the chest when you do that. And like even I had a big orchestra gig the other day in a huge big room, like it was massive. Like they call it a stadium, but it's not really a stadium. But it was 4 basketball courts long. Like we're talking big, massive high roof, full orchestra, choirs, and I still had to play low volume because the string players would have whinged at me. And so then with the Fractal, I can get that at a low volume and have my in-ears. And I took a little Fender. I have a Fender FR10 that I use, a little monitoring amp. And so I haven't actually turned the amps on for a minute. So yeah, mostly just doing that now. And the modeling gear has gotten really good. It really has. And I'm used to it now. I took a minute to get used to it in the first place. I think I struggled with that a little bit. So if I had a gig tonight and someone rang, that's totally what would be going. Little backpack with the Fractal in it, and then a guitar, whichever one suited the music, and the little Fender as a monitor.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. Yeah, actually, you brought up another question that I was saving for a little bit later, but here we are, hot topic. When you're playing with the orchestra, is that something where there'd be someone, or would you be mic'd up separately, or do you just play ambiently with the orchestra and then adjust your volume based on need from there?
Most things I do are more kind of the pop nature with the orchestra, so they mic everything. They have all the little bug mics on the orchestra the other day. I asked the sound guy, Chris G. It's my favorite sound guy around. He's amazing. And I said, can I go in stereo? I'm like, because the reverbs and delays and everything just sounds so much better in stereo. And he's like, hell yeah. He goes, I got 96 channels for the orchestra. Let's do it. And we had a really good monitor guy too, and it's the best I've ever had in ear monitoring, like period. Normally they suck, but this time it was like listening to a record in my ears. It was just fantastic. And then I had my little FR monitor for basically for the conductor. And he kept telling me to turn up. He was like, man, he goes, I want the solos to be like, and I'm like, man, I'm like killing people now. Are you sure? Like, but it's like, yeah, that's the thing. But yeah, no, it's always mic'd in those settings. But I have done a lot of stuff with orchestras where, like, if I play mandolin or I play acoustic guitar, there'll be like no amplification. Mm-hmm. And the last one I did with the NZSO, they did Mahler, and I played mandolin with that. And the conductor said, no amplification. I'm like, you're not going to hear a note I play. And he goes, well, let's just try it and see. So we did the first rehearsal, and I go, how did I sound? And he goes, I didn't hear a note you played. And I go, right, should I bring a little speaker tomorrow? And he goes, yes. So that whole unamplified mandolin or even acoustic guitar can't compete with a 94-piece orchestra.
No.
So you need some, but they don't mic it. They want it to be in the room in the classical setting. I don't do that many of them. I probably do one a year, maybe two a year. I'm not really a classical player, although I can do it. Usually I get those gigs if it's mostly pop, and then they do one classical tune, or so they need a feature just within one concert. So I might just play one tune and the orchestra plays the whole night.
Nice.
It's a lot of that. So there's a lot of sitting there going, wait for your moment. Try not to be rude. Try not to distract anyone, you know.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's great. So what, I know you still have some of your more traditional amps. I'm just going to call them that for lack of a better term. Non-modeling amps. Sure.
Sure.
When do you think you might actually pull those out for usage? Would that be something that you would reserve for maybe a studio gig, or is it just something that you still like just having around? Or yeah, tell me about that.
Yeah, so even for sessions, I use the Fractal. And it's funny, even like very experienced musicians, people with monster ears who I really trust, they don't know. And to be honest, they don't care. They just care if it's good or not.
Yep.
So I still use the Fractal even in those instances. The times I would use it, if I had to do an acoustic jazz recording, I'd get an amp out for that, and I'd probably maybe even use a reverb pedal, or maybe use the Fractal with just reverb, because the reverb's in them are killer, but still use the amp. And but in acoustic jazz setting, I would. If I was doing something that was like an instrumental guitar record, like one of mine, where the guitar is going to be right front and center, then I'd probably use a mix of both, because there are some advantages to amps and there are advantages to the modeling as well. But I think there's a certain punch with it. I often record just a DI'd electric as well with almost everything as a safety. So then I'd reamp that up through an amp. My friend Warren Mendonza in Auckland, actually, Warren has he does a reamping service for people where you send him a file, he'll run it through his amps and whatever, and mic it up and then send it back. And I thought my next album, I'm going to get Warren to do that with a couple of tracks and probably blend it with my amps and then blend it with the modeler and get certain kind of tones that I've been looking for. So, because I don't own any Marshall type amps, whereas he's got a Plexi and a couple of things like that are really tasty. So, but I love amps. I mean, amps are great. It's just so many gigs now. It's become impossible. And the biggest one for me is backline. So at least half my gigs, I'm not bringing my own amp. I'm using, and the last one that kind of made my mind up about it, I played the Aotearoa Centre in Auckland with the APO. It was like a Bee Gees type show, and they provided a Fender Hot Rod DeVille, and I got there, and the amp, I've told the story a lot, but the amp was pulsing. It sounded like it was going like this, like it had tremolo on it. And the sound guy goes, "Oh man, that's brand new. We've only used it once, and it was working fine then." I'm like, okay, so they ran another power to the amp, And I'm like, phew, like it fixed it. And then we go off stage, we go and have dinner, we come back, we walk out on stage, the audience claps, I plug into the amp and it's pulsing again. It sounds like it's doing tremolo. And the whole night, the guitar parts are things like this sort of thing with a and I was like, oh, I just can't have that. And the sound guy said, oh man, I could just unplug you and just you can just go direct if you want. And I'm like, DI'd electric guitar all night, no thanks. And I thought if I'd had a Fractal, I could have just gone to the front, you know, and would have.
Yeah.
And so often backline is like that, where it just, I'm sick of it. It's just, it doesn't work. Some of it's, you ask for a Fender Twin and you get there and it's like a solid state two speaker amp, and they go, oh, there's two speakers. That's what a Twin is, right? I had one gig where I got there was a Fender Frontline, those little practice amps. And I'm like, I'm not going to hear that over the drums and everything. What do you expect me to do? That was in Queenstown. And so now I just take the Fractal, plug into the front, and I get my sound is consistent. So it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes good sense. Yeah, you said the Hot Rod DeVille, and as I understand it, that is, I think, the world's most repaired amp because they have lots and lots and lots of issues all the time. So,
yeah, when I taught at the New Zealand School of Music in Wellington, we bought 4 of them one year. 2 of them didn't go. Brand new in the boxes, nothing, dead on arrival. Two were fine. Even then, those other 2 they've not been reliable. They use cheap components and stuff in them now, and they sound okay. They're not that great in the top end. They're a little sizzly in the top end, but they're okay if they're working. You know? Right. But I'd rather have a crappy amp that works.
Yeah. That I guess that reminds me of the whole "you can't beat Wellington on a good day" kind of thing. Like when the amp,
exactly.
It's a great amp when it works.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
Let's see. Do you have a guitar or even an amp that got away? One that you wished you'd never gotten rid of? Maybe that very first one?
Oh, yes. No, the first one, and for sentimental reasons. But I remember I just got married, and my wife and I were in Auckland for some reason. We've been there we've been married about 6 months, and we got to, I went to the K Road Rock Shop, and I saw this guitar in the corner. They're all beat up. And I went and I grabbed it and had a play on it. And I'm like, I have to buy this. And she's like, we just spent like 30 grand on our wedding or whatever. We can't afford it. And I'm like, it was a Broadcaster.
Wow.
Fender Broadcaster. Yeah. They wanted 5 grand for it.
Wow.
I know. It was beat up to shit. Like it had been routed for humbuckers. But the neck and the body was about the only thing that was original, but it was still the soul of a Broadcaster. And I thought, man, that could have been a guitar that you fixed up. And I've seen them in mint condition go for like 250,000 US. So for 5 grand, that was one of the ones that I thought, damn it, I wish I had got that. I sold a Music Man Sabre some years ago, which was a guitar I actually owned. And that was a really great guitar. It was one of the 70s ones that Leo Fender had made. That was a great guitar. I wish I hadn't have sold that one. Had a really unusual circuit in it. It was a treble and a bass because it was an active circuit. And that was crazy useful to be able to actually like EQ your guitar. So sometimes I'd turn the bass control up on the bridge pickup, but then turn it down on the neck pickup to get a more balanced kind of thing. It was really nice. I wish I hadn't sold that one, but I traded that and a 70s Strat for my Paul Reed Smith.
Wow.
Which at the time, Paul Reed Smiths were really expensive, you know.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so that's a couple.
Yeah. That would be 2 that would definitely be regretful. I get that. Yeah, I hope you do find one like your original one at some point. So
that would be nice, yeah. And I mean, that probably wouldn't be very expensive. Just put it on the wall, never play it, type thing.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Frame it. Yeah, nice. Make a nice shadow box. Big shadow box, but a nice shadow box. What's the last guitar tech thing that you got really excited about? What's new that excites you?
What have I seen? The Tonex one I thought was a pretty cool kind of thing. I think those are going to be super popular. That was one that I saw and I thought, that's going to hit a lot of people. As a backup, if nothing else, you could chuck that in your gig bag and then if you have a backline amp that goes down, you just plug that thing in and you go and you've got a sound. But also, a lot of people, it's kind of I wish when I was starting there was that kind of level of tech to get started on. Something like that would be amazing. Because definitely weren't getting those kind of tones when I started. I remember when I first got my first DD2, I think it was, delay pedal. Just the fascination of being able to play and the notes go with delays. So let alone something like that has reverb built in it. That kind of stuff. I think that's a pretty cool bit of kit. I think that app Moises, is it called? Moises. It's the AI app that you can split stems out of songs.
Oh, nice.
Amazing. So you load a song in and it separates drums, bass, guitar, vocal into different parts. Those sort of things are pretty exciting in terms of the tech in music, because now you can go in and you can like really isolate the guitar part and find all the things that you had wrong.
Nice.
And some of them I had very wrong.
Yeah.
Sex Machine by James Brown. I've been playing that for years and played it wrong. I always thought it was. But it's, if you listen closely, once you isolate it, but you don't hear that because it's blended in with the bass.
Right.
But it feels completely different to play it. And so many things like that I've discovered now, and I've gone, wow, I don't know how that tech works to separate out an MP3 to find all those bits, but it works. So, yeah, amazing.
Yeah, that's very cool. Have you seen, there's a tool / app / service called Muse Sessions? I think there's a few of these out there, but they actually allow for remote collaboration online.
Wow.
And it's
That'd be cool.
I'm not going to say it's real time, but they're working on getting it as near to real time as possible, because speed of light is the speed of light, and you can't really go faster than that at this point. But yeah, it looks really, really neat. I've played with it just a little bit. I'm looking forward to trying it a bit more, but yeah, it's something that's pretty neat. So, and it's,
that kind of tech will change the global world of music for sure.
Yep.
Because it will no longer be a disadvantage to be on a little island in the Pacific called New Zealand.
Exactly.
Which in a lot of ways it is. We really are isolated from the rest of the world.
Yep.
But stuff like that kind of opens up the world. And so I'm really excited about that kind of stuff. And I know some people kind of fear AI, and they sort of have this idea that AI stuff is going to, and it will. There will be people who use it for bad things like everything, but there'll be a lot of good things too. And so anything like any tech like that that's AI based or speeds up collaboration online or anything like that, I'm all for it. So it's great.
Fantastic.
But no, I didn't know that one, so I'll have to check it out for sure.
Yeah, it's really neat. You can actually turn control of your DAW over to somebody remotely so that they could actually change your mix up.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Yeah, definitely check that one out.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, for sure.
So I know you've also taught quite a bit as well as part of your career. I was going to ask what is, if there is one thing or a few things that you would have taught your younger self that you wished you had learned much earlier that you know now?
Yeah, so it's funny you say that, because I just put out a video a couple of days ago about 5 things that I wished I'd known when I started playing. Because, hindsight is an interesting thing to look back on things and go, a big one, I'd say, if while we're discussing gear and technology and that stuff, is one big mistake I made was never kind of going all in on gear. I'd go, well, this is what I want, but this is what I can afford. So I'm just going to buy this, then I'm going to trade that, I'm going to work my way up, and I'm going to trade that. And it would have been much cheaper to just go for the thing that I wanted and not have lost money on all those steps, and better for my playing, because I would have had better instruments or better gear. And you feel the pain once and then you get on with it. My Victoria amp was like that. I remember when I bought that, the little deluxe, and I think it was about $3,500 at the time, plus shipping, to get to New Zealand for a 15-watt 1x12 tweed combo. And I remember at the time thinking, ouch, a lot of money to pay for one thing, but that amp's more than paid for itself now with gigs and various different things I've done. So yeah, it's pretty cool. But that'd be a big one. Another one would be like rhythm guitars that, guitar players spend 90%, most of the time working on soloing, and yet rhythm guitar is where it's at. It's what you do 90% of the time.
Yeah.
If you play a song, 90% of it is playing rhythm guitar and 10% is taking a solo. And yet we work all the time on that solo bit and not so much the rhythm guitar thing. So that's a lesson I learned the hard way, sort of that had to start focusing more on playing good rhythm guitar.
Yep. Nice.
Yeah. But definitely taught quite a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, so playing with the full orchestra, because I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that's just something they either never have considered doing, never have done, or may never even do. So just going to ask if there are some things that you find particularly challenging and particularly rewarding about playing with an orchestra that you'd like people to know about.
Yeah, so I have the best seat in the house. When I'm sitting there, the guitar player, because most of the time I'm sort of a soloist in some sort of way. So I'm usually right in front of the conductor. So I've got the whole thing all around me. It's like 360, and there's sometimes it's just so lush, and the bits I'm not playing, and I'm just sitting there going, "This sounds amazing." Looking around at all these musicians, and it's incredibly powerful and. Oh, it's incredible. The scariest thing about it, though, is always the conductor, because orchestras play so late off the beat. To start with, I always thought the bottom of the stick was where they, when the conductor goes 1, 2, 3, 4, you would think 1 is there. Nope, it's like 1. They play so late, and so you come in early, and then you're like, oh, no, I'm sorry, and everybody around you reads better than you, because they're classical musicians and you're the guitar player and amongst the orchestra. So that kind of stuff is pretty scary. There's things I've learned to sort of deal with that stuff, I've learned that you don't necessarily have to watch the conductor the whole time. It's more, you might be reading the music, but your peripheral vision is on the conductor. And a lot of times too, I try, instead of actually watching where their beat is, I try and feel where their beat is. But you can kind of feel by someone's, when they go... when they're doing this sort of motion, you go, okay, I can feel where their beat is more than thinking it's the bottom of the stick. Do you know what I mean? So that kind of stuff is pretty scary. And you're reading too, you're reading, so you have to follow that person read, have your ears wide open, trying to blend with the band. And it's a big ask of anyone, I think. I enjoy that so much. And when it all comes together, it's the biggest, most powerful sound you can get. I love it.
Yeah, it covers the whole spectrum. It's great. So are there any Aotearoa artists that you're currently listening to lately, or who have you been spinning as of late that are local?
Lots of people. I mean, I mentioned Warren Mendonça before. Great guitar player. I really like his stuff, the Black Strat Blues stuff. Warren's a great player and a good friend. We've been doing a podcast every week for his channel. I think it's called No Guitars Without Music. I really like his stuff. His albums are great. All kinds of people. I mean, there's some amazing artists in this country. I was listening to the other day Tears by the Crocodiles, which is a song from back in the day. You Ought to Be in Love, Dave Dobbin was one that I was listening to, and Dave's stuff is fantastic. I've played a few gigs with him over the years, and he's really just a national treasure in my opinion.
Nice.
Who else is there around? I quite like some of what LAB are doing. Joel's a good guitar player. Who else is doing good stuff? There's lots of it, really. Drax Project, I remember those guys when they were students at the jazz school. Used to see them around, and they're doing big things now. So there's lots of great music. Not all of it necessarily gets to the top of the scene, but yeah, and there's some great artists around.
That's what I love hearing about too. Some of the more unknown stuff is always
for sure.
Always where you can find some gold, as it were.
Yeah, totally. Harry Harrison and Christchurch is doing some great stuff. He's a really good guitar player.
Okay.
So, there's different people around. Yeah.
Do you have a favorite place to play here in the country?
Wellington.
Venue-wise.
Venue-wise? My favorite venue used to be a little place called Hashigozaki in Wellington, which is just closed, unfortunately.
Oh, no.
Which sucks. It's a real blow for our community. That place was awesome. It was a tiny little... it used to be the police cells in Wellington. It was an underground bar people would come and they would just pack the place. It was packed with about 100 people, and there was a real vibe in that room. It was just great. And because the wall behind the walls was dirt, like it was literally underground, that you could play really loud if you wanted to, or really soft. It didn't matter. It like would soak it up. And the owner was really cool. He would come and carry your gear out to the car after the gig and all that sort of stuff. He loved it. And yeah, but unfortunately, he's had to close. But that was my favorite place to play, period. It was just a little, and we just played there for us. That was the only reason to do it.
Right.
And then because people saw that we were enjoying it ourselves, they were enjoying it. And I do crazy things in there. It was such a tiny room, and I do gigs with two drummers, both on drum kits, an organ and a guitar, and try and fit it in that tiny little space. And if anyone was visiting in town, if I had visiting artists, I'd take them. I'd kind of organize a little jam with them and whatever. So we had Francisco Torres down there, who was trombone player from Los Angeles. He's Poncho Sanchez's MD. Trombone player on Dancing with the Stars in the US and all those sorts of things. The great blues guitar player Chris Kane, I took him down there one night to play. David Berkman, a fantastic New York jazz piano player, I took him down there to play, so it was kind of just the hang, you know what I mean?
Nice.
But in Wellington, the Rogan Vagabonds, really a really good kind of club like that as well. But in terms of bigger venues, I quite like the Michael Fowler Centre in Wellington. It's a nice space.
Yeah.
I quite like the Aotearoa Centre in Auckland, although they have power issues in that spot for some reason. So that's where the pulsing tremolo was coming from, I'm sure. I've played there a few times, and every time I've heard there's been hum or noises in that room. So, but that's a good one. CJC used to, the Anthology Lounge in Auckland was a good spot to play. Quite liked that. I don't know if that's still going though. You probably know more about that than I do, with being in Auckland.
Unsure, but yeah, it's worth looking up. So yeah.
Oh, we really lack sort of mid-sized venues in New Zealand. That's something that doesn't happen a lot. We have your small little clubs that do music, and then your kind of bigger places like the Aotearoa Centre or St. James in Wellington. But it's that 500 to 1,000 seat type thing that really lacks here. So big time.
Yeah. You mentioned the hum, and I remember some folks. I've got one of the home batteries here, and I've been seeing some activity online in certain groups where people are taking along a little home battery that'll easily run an amp for like even a tube amp for 3 hours worth of time, and then they're like, hey, no power issues, no noise, no nothing. It's because it's completely independent, and I mean, it's the difference between running a pedal off of a battery versus off of a power line as well. So a lot of times you can get noise coming in from the wall wart 9-volt, as it were. So, but yeah. But
then can you carry that battery on a plane to go and do a gig somewhere?
Right. I guess if it's a carry-on.
Yeah. See, and that's where the fractal. I can take the fractal, and it is never a hum issue. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
So again, it's one thing I just don't even have to think about anymore, which makes a huge difference.
Yeah, that's great.
Because I mean, my whole thing is just focusing in on the music. That's all I want to carry. I mean, I love gear and all that stuff, but I want to get that stuff out of the way and just think about the music, try and play that the best I can.
Yeah, that's fantastic. This is kind of a weird question, but do you have a riff or tune or run that you like to play that literally always makes you smile when you play it?
Oh, good question. Nothing's come to mind, but probably.
Yeah.
That's a good question. Gee. I mean, I quite like the 70s classic rock, and I often do sort of piss take things where I'll try and put smoke in the water or on the water over top of other songs and stuff like that, It's just a cool thing, and I'll do sort of put things like that in when I'm on gigs, and quite like, or Sweet Child of Mine's, but actually Sweet Child of Mine's probably one that makes me smile every time I hear it.
Nice.
It's just such an iconic rock guitar riff, Yeah. Love it. Mm.
So a couple strict questions about strings and action. So do you prefer, what size strings do you usually play, or do you have a preference on that?
Yeah, 11 to 49s on everything.
Okay.
I used to use 10s on a more Fender scale and then 11s on the Gibson scale, but now I just use 11s on everything and just I'm used to it.
Nice.
And these are elixirs. I've been using elixirs for a long time. I like them because they don't really kind of wear out. So you just, eventually they do, but these strings have probably been on here for at least 6 months, I think.
Wow.
And that never used to happen with any other. So coated strings all the way for me now.
Yeah.
Now, they don't sound as bright as new strings. They sound like a couple of day old strings, but they stay like that. And so that's what I use, 11 to 49 pretty much on everything. I've got a couple of guitars with flat wounds on it, and that's kind of more for a jazz thing, although I don't play them very often. For being someone who's involved in the jazz world, I wouldn't really even call myself a jazz musician, but someone who's involved in the jazz world, I don't play flat wounds or an archtop guitar very often. Most of the time it's solid body guitars and, Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. And do you run your action higher or lower?
I like it lower.
Nice and close.
Yeah, so heavy strings, but lower action. As long as you can get under the string. I don't like it when it's basically almost touching the frets. But yeah, generally on the lower side. So I like guitars to play easy, but because of the heavier strings, there's a bit of tension anyway. I've got one guitar back there, which is a Strat. It's an old, crappy Squire Strat. It's actually quite a good guitar for a certain purpose, but it really suits having 10s on that guitar. I tried 11s, it just didn't sound that kind of Strat sound. So I just jacked the action right up. And then now it feels like it's got 11s on it anyway, but that's the only one I've done that on. And I've got to remember not to push too hard and kind of bend the notes out of tune with that high action, Yeah. Yeah, but no, I generally like a lower action. And
that's great. I've ran through all my questions. So now I'm scrambling trying to think of some stuff to chat about.
Man, your questions have been really great and very thoughtful, I have to say. And it's good because I've done a heap of these things, and it's often you get who are your influences and those sort of questions, which is cool. But your questions are very thoughtful. So yeah, thank you.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, I have one completely random one that I've not asked anybody yet before, and that was, is there a song with a lyric that you thought you knew? This kind of comes back to your James Brown Sex Machine bit there, where you thought you were playing it correctly, and then you were able to hear it and were able to hear exactly how it was played. Is there a song that you have where there was a lyric that you thought you knew, and then when you heard the actual or read the actual lyric, it completely shocked you that you had been, hearing it wrong the whole time?
There's probably been heaps of them, and there's probably been lots of songs where I didn't actually know the lyrics and just kind of hummed along with the melody. So, but nothing's coming to mind.
Okay.
But the classic one is "Excuse Me While I Kiss the Sky," right? That Jimi Hendrix thing. That's the first one that I always think of when I think of misheard lyrics.
Yeah.
But there's definitely been guitar parts that I've heard or done wrong. The classic being "Enter Sandman." Played that since I was a teenager and played it wrong. Everybody goes, which is totally wrong. I saw this guy do a video about it, and he said, you have to do this fingering. Because the G note sustains across it.
I see.
And you can't do it any other way. And he showed all these videos of James Hetfield's left hand, and sure enough, that's the fingering he was using to get that sustained G note. You can't play the open G, it just sounds wrong.
Yeah.
And I was like, my whole world just fell apart in that moment. I was like, I've been doing that wrong for so long. I learned that when I was about 15, and I thought I was really cool that I could play a Metallica song. Little did I know that everybody else could play it.
Yeah.
But I've been playing it wrong, and you have to go. It just sounds different with that note sustaining across.
It does, yeah.
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 Go figure.
Yeah.
And the good thing is now with all the stuff with stem splitting, there'll be more of that online, and people will be able to hear things that they didn't hear before. Mm-hmm. And definitely, that's a great thing. And I think people will be better for it. Like the players will progress faster. Every generation will get faster because there's more technology to help them with all that kind of stuff. I hope.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Is there a favorite solo that you have? I hear you on the rhythm guitar parts, and that's something I think does get missed a lot. So I was really glad to hear you say that. But is there a particular solo that stands out in your mind as like the most amazing one that you've heard?
The first one that always comes to mind is Kid Charlemagne by Steely Dan. The Larry Carlton solo is just iconic, and I think I learned that when I was about 15 or 16, and I've played it ever since.
Nice.
But that's one that definitely comes to mind. Kid Charlemagne, Another Brick in the Wall, David Gilmour, without a doubt. The one that everyone thought was a Strat for years, and it was actually a Les Paul. Hotel California, the guitar solo in that. I did a concert with the orchestra in Wellington one New Year's Eve. They did this waterfront gig, and they had to play that solo with the orchestra, which was great fun, rhythm section plus orchestra. The camera person, the whole 2 minutes, not one shot of the guitar. They filmed the violinists when they weren't even playing. They're sitting there holding their violins like this, and the person filmed them. It's like I posted it online. It's bloody hilarious because you can hear me.
Yeah.
And 2 minutes of guitar solo. It's a long solo. Not a single shot of guitar. They did a bunch of shots of the percussionists playing triangle and shit, excuse my language.
Yeah.
Hilarious. But yeah, that's one. Hotel California is one that comes to mind for sure. Definitely. What else is there? Oh, loads. Bohemian Rhapsody, Brian May. I'm a huge Brian May fan. I love his playing.
Yeah.
So melodic, and just you hear his stuff and it's stuck in your head and it's memorable. And his sound and his whole approach is just great. So yeah, Bohemian Rhapsody would be one for sure.
Yeah, great.
Yeah. Thanks for checking out my YouTube stuff too. I really appreciate you doing that.
No, that's good stuff. I'm gonna be completely honest. I haven't watched all 140, however many of them there are. Because that's
fair enough.
A lot of stuff there. It's like when I was interviewing Simon and he turned me on to Lovelands, and I was like, one, how have I missed this so far? And two, where am I going to find the time to watch all of the footage that they've shot there? So yeah, it's good though. Now I have, my playlist is growing and growing. So yeah.
Well, it's been interesting doing that, actually doing the whole daily thing, because I find, when you're doing, I think I'm playing better because of doing it, because everything I do on there is just one take. I don't have time to do more than one take, unless for some reason something goes wrong, like a microphone falls over or something wasn't recording, or that kind of stuff. But so I'm having to make sure I know what I'm going to talk about, how I'm going to do it, and it's getting out. And then I hear it back and I go, man, my time. And just the other day, I watched one of the videos that I did. I posted it up, and I thought, I'm just going to check everything's okay. And I noticed my thumb was doing this. And I was like, that technique is just sloppy. I was kind of playing like this with my thumb in a weird place, and so I went, no. So the last couple of days, I've been focusing on getting my thumb into a better position, so it's sort of more like this rather than this. And so it's been really useful in that sense. And I'm surprised who watches. I've got guitar buddies all around the world that send me messages, and man, I was just watching your video, and I'm like, wow. Did you know you were in that video I was talking about? And stuff like this. It's crazy the sort of reach you have with all that stuff now. And yeah,
that's very cool. Do you have any advice for anyone trying to get into the session gig world? I think I saw a video that you had for things to know about becoming a session musician or something along those lines, but yeah, I thought I'd ask anyway, top tips for that.
Sure. I'd say there is almost no session scene compared to what it used to be. There's still a little bit of work in that area, but it's become so dispersed now, and the money's fallen out of the bottom of it, and it's sort of, there's not a lot of that stuff around like there used to be. When I first started doing sessions, I was getting 2 sessions a week, and I could live off that, just doing 2 sessions a week with TV stuff or albums or whatever. If I get a couple a month, I'm happy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Now it's just a different world, and I get probably a huge amount of it here compared to a lot of guitar players, because I have a certain set of skills. So, but I mean, there is still work around. So if people are interested in kind of getting into that world, I would say a couple of things. Get your gear sorted. If you can't get the right sounds, then you're not going to get the gig, right? And that includes acoustic guitars. I get a lot of sessions where I play acoustic guitar, nylon string, steel string, mandolin. I play banjo as well. A lot of those sort of things. I have every electric guitar flavor covered. 12-string electric, Strat, Tele, Les Paul, 335, all that sort of stuff. Got all my gear sorted I can pretty much get any tone I wanted to, from metal to funk to country to rock, everything in between. So get your gear sorted. I think if people can read music, that helps a lot. It speeds up the process. I don't book musicians because sometimes I'm involved with putting together the session for stuff. I don't book people who can't read. It's just, sorry, but it's just too slow. I need to be able to put a chart in front of people, and we go and we're done and we're out of there because we're on to the next thing. And I can't pay people for long periods of time. It's like there's a limit to all that stuff. So reading is always a good idea. I think if you want to do that sort of stuff, knowing lots of music. I listen to heaps of music, which is why I like doing sessions, because to me it's sort of it's what I grew up with. I grew up with music, lots of different music. I like classical music as much as I like James Brown. You know what I mean? I like Steve Vai as much as I like Eddie Van Halen, as much as I like Wes Montgomery. I like it all, So listen to lots of music would be a good idea, and then get out and start doing some stuff. If you're not going to get the best session ever if you're just starting out. So I think start out and just do recordings for mates, play on their albums or whatever, and get yourself in the scene, get yourself known, do a good job, and people will call you back.
Yeah, nice. And I know you said it seems like it's tapering off. Do you have an idea of why it's less and less?
I think the ass has fallen out of the music industry. I think Spotify. This is going to be a bit of a rant for me, but I don't like a lot of the streaming services that are here now. I realize they're here to stay. I realize that's the modern model of how music is going to work, but in many ways, it's killed music. And I know some people don't like that. I mean, me saying that, but I'm like, whatever. When I was starting to play, I would have killed to have access to all the music that people have on Spotify and what have you. But the problem with it is it's now there is no CD sales or physical media sales. It's pretty much gone, other than with an older audience. And as those people kind of pass on or move on, that'll be the end of that. So really, it's all just streaming, and there's no money in it for 99.9% of people. And so therefore, if they're not making money, how can they employ session musicians? They just can't.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of screwed that side of it, and I realize it's here. It just needs to be a fairer model, I think. And that's, Spotify, I think, have some very questionable tactics about the way they do stuff. I don't know if you heard about the AI things they're up to at the moment, with making up AI artists that don't actually exist, putting them into their playlist so people are hearing it without really even thinking about it, and then all the royalties just return to Spotify. They've also lobbied the American governments to try and pay less to the creators of the music, and all kinds of things like that, which are very underhanded kind of tactics, Yeah. I have hope for it, that it will change and it will get better, But yeah, there's still people still consume music. People want music. People watch so much music on YouTube, and they go out to gigs, and they, so people still want the music. It's just got to be a finer model that kind of works for everyone. And I'm optimistic that will happen.
Yeah, for sure. I think kind of tying on to that, the concept that we have is like distribution specifically has never been easier, but that the people who've been capitalizing on that ability to get that distribution out there, like Spotify, for instance, have I believe done a great disservice. So yeah.
It's also that it's the distribution, but it's also that the gatekeepers disappearing from it isn't a good thing. Some people think it is, like, well, let's just let everybody have access to, be able to put stuff out. But that also means there's a whole lot of crap that should never have seen the light of day that's getting its way out and kind of cluttering it all. The record labels, for all their evil things they did, were also doing good things because they invested in artists.
Yeah.
And they took a chance on certain people because they went, well, this might work out. They had their 10 other people who were making good money, so they had 10 people they would try with. That stuff, Spotify doesn't invest in anybody. I'd love it if they kind of ended up like Netflix. Netflix creates their own shows. I'd love it if Spotify or whoever the next person is, started creating their own albums and their own things. And then that's good for the punter too, because the person listening would now want to go there because they've got exclusive music. So
yeah,
I don't see them doing that, but maybe.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you're listening, Apple, this
Come on.
this is it. This is your moment. So
Totally.
I mean,
remember when Napster was the big thing, right?
Yeah.
Napster was around everywhere.
Yep.
And then where's Napster now? Nowhere. So Spotify will be the same thing. I'm sure someone will come along, and it probably will be someone like Apple, reinvent the model, fix it, and that'll be that.
Yep. Yeah.
Mm.
I figure if they can do that
crossed.
if they can do it with the iPod, right, and having that digital music ecosystem built out, then surely they can pull this off. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
I'll give Tim a call.
Please do.
This has been wonderful. I really appreciate it. And again, I can't wait to watch more of your videos on YouTube.
Oh, thank you.
They're just super informative and useful. So there's a lot of stuff on YouTube that is not. So it's nice to see some good quality content coming out that's actually useful. And also,
well, if you have any ideas for things you want me to do, then let me know, because one of the things of doing daily content is I want to do it for people that what people want to see.
Yep.
So if there's things you want to see, let me know.
Yeah, for sure. Hey, what gigs and shows do you have coming up that you'd like people to know about?
Sure. I have nothing in my diary for the next month, which is fantastic. It's the first part of this year where I've actually had a bit of a break. But I am, and there's a bunch of gigs booked after that, which is fine. And stuff will come in. There's always calls. But the big ones this year, I'll be doing We Will Rock You in Wellington for a month. So you get to play all those fantastic Brian May guitar parts. That will be a month plus rehearsals, all that kind of period.
Yep.
I'm playing the Taranaki Jazz Club with my funk band with 2 drummers, so 2 drum kits, keyboard and guitar. We're doing that in very early August, I think it was September, just before We Will Rock You starts. So that's one that I'm really looking forward to. I'll do the big New Year's Eve thing on the waterfront with the orchestra this year. They've already been talking about that now. We get about 20,000 people down to that one, so that's always a big thing. And the orchestra, a big outdoor stage. So, there's a couple of things like that are kind of booked ahead. So, and then a whole lot of little crummy gigs in between.
Yeah, it keeps the lights on.
I've got the daily thing on YouTube. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Oh, that's amazing. Great. And yeah, I'll contact you about some collaborative stuff later. But I really, again, appreciate you being on the show, and look forward to touching base again soon. I think that'd be really fun.
Awesome. Well, if you're ever in Wellington, send me a message or something, or go meet up for a coffee or something and catch up. And I know Simon would be up for that as well too. So
that'd be perfect.
That'd be great.
Yeah, fantastic. Thanks,
cool.
Nick.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks so much.
Thanks again. Talk to you soon.
Nice to meet you.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Bye-bye. Thanks everyone for watching and or listening. I hope you've enjoyed this Korero with Nick. Please look for his upcoming shows in the show notes. Please go ahead and hit like and subscribe, and let me know what you think of the show. Stay tuned for the next one. It's coming soon.